Click the bell icon to get latest videos from Ekeeda.
Hello friends, today we will discuss about building large web applications, and for that we need to know about the application architecture in details that will consist of the user interfaces, the business logic layer as well as the data access layer. After that we have formed the architecture of an application that we will build. We will know about the application development tools, that how can we form the business application, and also now we will know about the rapid application development tool that will include it as a part of the web application. Hello friends, today we will discuss about building a large web application. Now to do that we first need to know about the application architecture that is consisting of the user interface layer, the business logic layer as well as the data access layer. Now when we talk about this, after that we need to know about the rapid application development, and after that we will use the tools that various numbers of including in this web or the Java area to build the large applications. And after finally we will know about what are the report generator and how does it help on building the web application. To start with building a large application, first we need to know about the application's architecture. So the application architecture, we can divide it into three categories. First is the front end or the user interface layer. Second is the business logic layer. And third is the data access layer. Now when we talk about an user interface, you are actually dealing with the user and its interface or interaction with the machine that will use the database or any web applications which will connect with the database. Now to deal with this user interface layer, we are mainly concerned with the user's participation into our program. So when we are building an web application, we need to consider what are the needs or what the user will want out of that web application. Generally, the web application means that is a medium to connect to the database and the user. So the web applications will be based on the user's participation. Generally, the user interfaces follows a model view controller process or a MVC process. So how to know about the user's participation? First, the model actually gives us an overview of what the user's demand could be on a web application. Next, the view gives us a detailed database view on which the user can be accessed. And the controller finally controls all the actions of the users that can be made on this web application so that it could have a proper suggested feedback on the database. Now the next layer we will discuss about the data access layer. So before that we need to know about the business logic layer. The business logic layer is the higher level of this definition of the tables or the relations in the database. And the final data access layer provides a mean to connect to the database. That means how data can be accessed through the database to the user. And via the web application, we can connect to the database and get the data first to the database, then to the web application, finally to the user via the web application. Now, when we discuss about the business logic layer, the business logic layer, as we have already told, that it is a higher level view of the database or how a user can interact with the database. That means it is being an actual medium to the web applications. Now when the business logic is there, that means we are considering more with the particular concern of the enterprise. So the university web application will be different from the banking web application. For example, the business logic in a university application is how the student could be reached on a university advertisement, or when they are responding back to the advertisements, how well they will be informed on that particular form feedback, or the web applications that could give them the more information on a university program, what course offerings are there, what timings, what fees and all. So there is a business logic behind every of this concern and different from each other. So the logic need to be put into a network-based medium and then it should reach the user via the user interfaces. Now it also deals with the workflows. Now other than using the logic, it actually applies how to use the logic. Again, take for example the university registration process. When a student admits or when a student applies for a course in a university, so first it will move to the admin department. If the admin department has approved it, then it will go to the department of course. If it has been approved, then it will go to the accounts department. If it has been approved, then it will goes to the actual course or the instructors that will be admitted to the student. So in this way, the workflow, that means by which means from which step to which step, the work will flow from one business logic to another one to finally complete an action. So that is more concerned with the business logic layer. Now we will talk about the data access layer and the object relational relationship. Now the data access layer, as we have already prescribed, has the access to the database. That means after that the business logic has been established for an enterprise, we should use the medium or the logic to use in the data access layer so that actually we can use the data. Now when we are talking about the database, there are two different ways to represent it. One is the object-oriented way and another is a relational way. Now when the schemas are defined into the database, they are more into relational way, that one table is connected with another table via a relation. But when at the user interface or the front end we are using the university website or a web browser that will connect to the web server on the database, it will happen that we are dealing with the real-time objects, that we are clicking on a button, going to the menu. So that does not cut any type of relationship with the schemas that is stored in the actual database. So there must be some mapping to the object to the relational schemas. So one type of this mapping is known by this Hibernate system. Now the Hibernate system, as the name suggests, it is hibernated otherwise, and student or any other user who has been using an object-oriented database and now want to use the mapping of object-oriented to the actual database, which is stored in the form of a relational schema. Now how to do the mapping? Say for the Java interfaces, the JSP and both the servlets of Java provides an introductory opportunity to the user that he can use a student class as well as a student relation in the database. So when I am talking, or when the user end is more concerned, it is the student class that the user is dealing with, or an object to the student class. And now the student class is being mapped with the student relation. So how we can get data? We use the result dataset. The result dataset is an object that connects to the relation and fetches the result in form of a table and then get back to the Java class so that all the table's value can be displayed or can be used by the user. Now when this Hibernate system is being used, we can say that we can actually map the real-time object to the machine type, the databases or the relational schema. So we don't need to change the object-based databases because relational schema can be maintained there by the human orientation. And now in the front end, the user using a web application or a large web application can be used by this type of interface designers. Now that we have known about the result dataset, some Java providers also support the use of the entity set model. Now we know that in general, our real-life examples use the object as entities. That means the entity has got some behaviors to them as well as some data sets to them. So now if we connect to this with the relational schema, which we have only the values, not the behaviors, the behaviors being the relationship to the schemas that uses a relation to the particular database. Now that we know about all the layers in an application or the basic architecture of building a large application, we should know that how the web application can be built. So if we construct our database without the use of this result dataset or other features that is being introduced in the web era, the programming task will be more higher complex and it will be expensive too. Now, some development tools are there to provide some features like a library function to use all of the basic features, or we can use a drop-down menu to select from a feature. Other than that, we could have used the forms to get feedback from the user. So all these features that is now being used in a web era is being introduced by a rapid application development tool, or shortly we known as a RAD tool. Now the RAD tool supports to design and build a large web application. See, we are more concerned with a large application because in real life, we do not have a single application page that serves all the bases for a user need to an enterprise. Say for the university administration, it has got the academic department, the finance department, the international and national students admission department, the alumni department, and each of it will be maintained by different type of web pages, will contain different information. So how can we combine it into a single web application? Using the RAD tool gives us the opportunity to do so. Now, other than using the RAD tool, there are many other options to use it, like the Oracle Apex, the application extension. So the Apex provides the similarity to the RAD tool to actually embed it into our architecture so that we can build a large application very easily. Other than that, we can use the JSPs or the ASPs, the application server page, the Java server page, which embed a C++ like structure in both the client and the server-side scripting, so that we can include the HTML code and the C or C++ or Java code inside the programming languages code. So we can use it very smoothly, like the HTML can have now my syntax for the programming languages, which will interact with the objects, and the HTML part will interact with the design, and both will connect to the database with the JDBC connectivity or ODBC connectivity. So the result set generally belongs to the JDBC connectivity. So the first type of tool we can use for building applications is menus. Menus are very useful while using it for application building, because it may not happen that the first web page you are seeing has got all the information or all the web pages links. We use simply a menu for that. In the left hand side in the top corner, we have the menus, and clicking on each option to the menu, we can generate another web application actually. That means when we are referring to the web page, that web page may contain another web application, or it can be a part of the same web application. Now see that menus are more connected to the database, not to the object that they are using. That means when we select the option from the menu controller actually changes and updates to the database, not the object-oriented model that we are seeing. Next type of tool is the form. So how can we use the forms to build in a large web application? Well, form is the basic idea for building an application, because in the form or using a form tag in the HTML standard, we can get the result to the user, feed it to the web browser, and then get back to the web server with the result that what the query user is asking for. If the result matches in the database, then we will give the back result to the result dataset on a JDBC connectivity and then back to the user. So form is giving me a very basic idea for using a large web application. Now, unfortunately, that many of the web server or the web browser does not provide us these features that we are talking about in their part of the intention. So we need to adhere more of the servlets or the JSP, ASP cannot give us the feature. So we need to stick to the JSF, that is a Java server faces, or applications like this which include the features. Now it is very much important that how a result is fetched from the database and it is being displayed to the user or being used by the user. We cannot have a large database that is being displayed to the user. Say the user has searched for all the university faculties. So it will create a large dataset, and we cannot just display it into a normal web page. we need a result dataset object from the JDBC connectivity that we have talked for. Now the result dataset object will be created by the object-oriented model, mapped to the database, get the result from the database in a table form, now into mapped again back to the result dataset object, and the result dataset object will be handled by the user. Often we create pagination, that means we create a record per page. That means there will be 5 records per page, and like this we create 5 or 6 pages for a large database or a large result dataset on a large web application. Now to connect to this one, we use the JSF, which uses the result dataset object as well as the dataset object, which use the drop-down menus, the control list, the combo box, list box, and like these features. Well, when we use these features, our web applications becomes more attractive and more acceptable by the users. Now, the JSF provides the dataset object that uses a validator control inside an input box. That means we could have explicitly mentioned some conditional constraints to use the database, that the user cannot use the database in this mode, or the user cannot input or change the database of this particular condition. Now there is a validator control that we can include in the input field. Say for an example that the salary that we are updating or inputting to a particular text field should be greater than 25,000. So we can put this type of validation, that means the data will be validated first, then it will be accepted as an input to the database. So the validator control is placed inside the database using the dataset objects. Now there are user authentication process to use that which user will be allowed to use which part of the database. And the user actions are being monitored by these dataset objects and be called by the event handler in an object-oriented model. Then it will be mapped to the relational schema. Now we often uses a data grid. A data grid is also a dataset object by provided on a JDBC connectivity. That means the data grid will be helping us to see the result in a more grid manner, so that the result will be provided that we can precisely say that it belongs to these attributes and all. So this is designing purpose, and we can say the web services that they are providing, like for the REST, the response application set timing, or we can go for many other web services that we can build in by this application on a large web. Finally, that we have gathered all the details of building a large web application, the reporting generator or the report generator is the last one to generate the report on a web application, like say based on some data. For an enterprise of a shop or a large market, then we are maintaining that can be built on the report generator. That means a report will be generated from the past heuristical data, that what data or what product was being used more, which product has got a very big sell value and all. So we can see all this within a report that can be generated by the web application by this report generator section. So in this way, we can build a large web application by using the interface, logic, and the data access layer, and the tools like menus, drop-down list, combo box, list box, user action handler, validator control, and all. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and subscribe to Ekeeda.